Jadzia Dax releases Julian Bashir's tension with her hands. Joseph Sisko used to make his family test new recipes. And Ibadan likes back smoochies. Well, at least his clone does. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Oh, gosh. Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine Season 1 episode, A Man Alone, story by Gerald Sanford and Michael Piller, teleplay by Michael Piller, directed by Paul Lynch. This is January 17th, 1993. Where were you? It's a Nog episode, everybody. Finally, Malissa Longo has returned to the Seventh Rule.
Woohoo! Yay! And I'm wearing the best friends.
Love it.
Special for this episode.
Everybody, you can find that shirt in the link in the description box below, the Star Trek and Chill Spotify link. So go get your Jake and Nog, Stembolt and Chill. Thanks for wearing that, Melissa. That's so cool. Also, a little later on, stick around. We've got actor, stuntman, and stunt coordinator extraordinaire legend who has actually broke world records in the past, Mr. Dennis Madalone, a little later. So stick around for that.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into this. So Jadzia Dax likes to release Julian Bashir's tension with her hands.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, Julian was not in the way Julian was hoping.
My word.
Cold hands, warm heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Do you guys notice how Jadzia was totally different than how we remember her in the first few episodes?
Mm-hmm.
The way they envisioned her character was this wise, sage, almost ethereal type,
mm-hmm.
you know, where she's meditating and she's listening to people's footsteps. That changed dramatically. And I think they mentioned it before when they realized that they're just like, she's just too young and fun and friendly. That's more her type, the fun type more so than the wise contemplative type. But I'd forgotten that until I see this episode. It's like, wow, what a dramatic difference.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking that too. It's like, oh, so they're still figuring Jadzia out. They haven't figured her out yet. Or Terry Farrell figuring out who she is as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, also how Sisko and Dax are going to interact with each other, that really hasn't been fully established yet. He's the whole old man stuff is just now kind of being flushed out.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing how that kind of plays out too as well. I thought it was interesting that Dax is in the opening shot of this is in a yoga position. And I think that it's interesting that Terry Farrell is into yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually one of the things that I think she was doing yoga on the cruise, as a matter of fact. She had a yoga kind of session on the cruise. So I thought it was pretty cool how, your character and you somehow find ways to have similar interests. And in this case, yoga was the right call for Dax.
That's really interesting. Everybody in the comments below, let us know a Star Trek character that has the same talent or skills or passions that the actor does. Like, for example, Riker and his trombone. Jonathan Frakes plays the trombone, things like that. We know that Patrick Stewart does not have a passion for flute playing, as evidenced in The Inner Light when he's playing. It's not the most believable thing, but anyway, that's a fun one.
Nog and Aron had a passion for playing practical jokes on people, evidenced in this episode with the Granny and Bull lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just changed people color.
Why did they all just say, "Oh, you can still go see the doctor after you had like a full freak out episode. But when it went away, they were like embarrassed. You know what I was picturing when they were doing that? I was like, I wish I could have seen the auditions. Like they're like, okay, go, okay, and action. I think, we've all had to do these weird auditions where like, you're just, sometimes it's usually a lot of times for like commercials where you don't even really have many lines or any lines at all. You're doing something weird, or you're itchy, and then you got the director going, okay, now you're turning colors. Okay, now itch each other, and you're trying to, you're like, am I doing this right? I don't know.
What is going on?
Yeah.
I don't understand the world right now.
I also thought it was kind of strange when it's like, somebody call the doctor. I'm like, just beam yourself to the infirmary or something. Like,
right?
Walk there.
Or just walk down. It's right down the hall. I swear. You can check yourself in. There's no appointments needed. You'll be fine.
And I had watched the 7th rule review of this episode review with Aron, and I have to agree with Aron. There was no evidence for Odo to accuse Jake and Nog of doing it, even though they did do it. But how does he know that they did it? There's no evidence.
Well, we didn't actually
we were
see
just
them
enjoying it too much.
We didn't actually see them place them there. This could be circumstantial.
Right.
It's all circumstantial.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Yep. I think it was Quark.
Oh, Quark.
Yeah, I noticed that. Well, first of all, us being up to no good definitely was Nog's idea. So we're going to go ahead and give him the instigating award for starting this little, what is it? Granian Bull Lights?
Yeah. Granium something or other.
Something. Yeah. But yeah, no, I thought that was fun, and it was just great to see the kind of interactions. I like the scenes with Sisko and Jake, where he's like, I don't want you hanging out with that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And just the whole friendship, like, well, there's nobody else here my age, type of thing. It's like, that's the guy I'm supposed to be hanging with. The first scene when they show Jake and Nog, he tells him, why don't you talk to somebody else? And he's like, there's not exactly a lot of kids around here to choose from. It's like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Jake says hi first, though. He comes up and says hi. So he initiates the friendship with the breaking the ice, like, hey, who is this kid eating this jom stick, or what is it called?
Jamja stick.
Jamja stick, yeah. Let me roll up on him eating his Jamja stick. So that was funny, and it was fun to watch the whole beginning of their relationship, beginning of their friendship.
Yeah, there are a lot of. It just felt like most of the characters were very different than how we remember them generally. I mean, we know that, like, for example, even Quark, who really had his character pretty fleshed out from the very beginning, that, we can tell that he already knows his character, Armin Shimmerman does. But even him, I noticed a difference in his voice, in the way he kind of delivered things like this. He was still hanging on to a little bit of TNG Ferengi, or maybe the directors or producers were. They're like, no, you got to make them seem, a little stranger. Odo's voice was very different. It was higher pitched and tinnier, to the point where if I wasn't watching, if I was typing something, I was like, who's talking right now? And I'd look up, I'm like, that's Odo? It doesn't. Later on, he talks a little more low and gruff. And this time he was talking kind of more up here. And it was just a little different. Same thing with Rom. Rom had a major difference, but I mean, that's full scale difference because of the way he was originally intended. And then they adjusted him. But Everybody was very different. Molly was she was just
oh my gosh, she was so cute.
Molly was Molly.
Yeah.
And Keiko was Keiko.
True. She didn't change.
She didn't change. O'Brien is pretty much himself. He doesn't change much.
Yep.
But I did notice the same changes in Rom's voice and his delivery as how he wants to present Rom. He was more assured of himself. You know, he looked more confident than kind of the bumbling guy that he ended up becoming a little bit later on. This version of him seemed more confident. And the accent, the way he plays it was different. Little accents that he puts on words, where he's like, "This all like brother." He didn't have so much of that yet in this performance of Rom. But I want to say that. Oh, go ahead.
No, they did establish him being an idiot, though. An idiot.
Right.
From Odo's line, well, Rom's an idiot, so he doesn't fix anything.
And Melissa, do you agree that he's an idiot?
No, he's not. He's not an idiot, but he plays it more like an idiot later on as the season goes on. The other thing that I would say when it came to Odo's voice, I noticed the same thing, but I also felt like that it was done in post-production. And that's where the note that I put down was that the ADR work was kind of terrible because it did not match the tone. So I believe that
scene? In Ops?
Yeah, so the scene in Ops where it was Kira and Odo walking around in Ops, the sound was terrible. And and it was noticeably bad. And that's where I feel like some of the voices of Odo that didn't match, because when it was close-ups, the ADR was appropriate. So Odo's voice was more like Odo in the close-up scenes that were not using the ADR work. So usually the ADR comes when they're doing a walk and talk scene inside of Ops, for example, which is what this Kira and Odo scene started off. It was a walk and talk scene inside of Ops. And when you have a walk and talk scene like that, sometimes the sound boom can't get in close enough to be able to get a good sound because they're using a long kind of microphone boom. And if it's too far away inside of Ops, they will not be able to get the sound perfect. When it's a close-up, they can easily bring the microphone right above this frame of the shot. And so it's right there. But when it's a long, wider kind of establishing master shot, it's more difficult. And so in the ADR work, when Renee was talking in the large shot in the master, that was done in ADR. And that's why the voice did not match his usual voice.
Totally. I usually notice ADR the most when, the notorious when people are outside. When they're shooting outside, very seldomly are you going to get great sound outside because you just can't control the elements, especially if you see in the background behind them trees waving around, that's ADR. There's no chance that that's not going to be ADR because there's wind, there's all these things happening. But yeah, that's a great point about the walk and talk and about the establishing shots, the big wide things. Because otherwise you're going to see the boom hanging down.
Right.
We see a lot sometimes. They go up, cut, boom and frame, boom. See the boom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I used to see those guys, and that was a talent in itself to be able to hold that boom.
Oh my gosh!
Like
do you ever wonder how they're able to do that for like forever? And they look like they're kind of fine, and I'm like, that doesn't look comfortable.
No,
it does not, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's actually taxing on your body.
I bet.
So yeah, that's why I noticed that the voices didn't match for both of them. The scenes that I thought stood out the most as mismatching for Odo's voice were both done in ADR.
And on that subject, who else noticed audio issues in this episode? Mr. Aron Eisenberg. So everybody do yourself a favor and go back to our original review of this. I believe that would be T7R episode 19. Let me just confirm that real quick. T7R episode 19. And Aron Eisenberg talks about the audio issues in that review. If you want to skip ahead to it, it's right around the 1838 mark, as noted by Malissa Longo. And Aron will be a part of this conversation quite a bit later on in our free-for-all. We'll be bringing up old clips of him talking about this episode and getting some conversation going from there, because he always made so many great and amazing observations. We're going to take a super quick break. Everybody stick around. We've got another segment after this. And then we've got Mr. Dennis Madalone, stunt coordinator extraordinaire. And then we'll have the free-for-all with Aron Eisenberg clips. So much great stuff. Stick around on this deep dive. We'll be right back on the 7th rule. Everybody, welcome back to the 7th rule. It's your lucky day. Cirroc Lofton is here.
Hello.
Yay.
It's our lucky day because he's always here. What a relief. Malissa Longo, of course, as well. Also our lucky day. I feel like I should have just said that about Cirroc. Like, isn't it a lucky day when I'm here? It is. Here are the trivioids of the week, everybody. Jadzia Dax can recognize a person by the rhythm of their steps. Jadzia Dax releases Julian Bashir's tension with her hands. Odo has never coupled. Keiko O'Brien doesn't like it on Deep Space Nine. Joseph Sisko, I can't say Joseph Sisko without smiling, used to make his family test his new recipes. Keiko O'Brien just needs to be useful. Seemed like a kind of a rude line. Ibadan likes back smooches, at least his clone does. Besides Jake and Nog, there are 12 other kids between the ages of 8 and 16 on Deep Space Nine. Odo is an ill-tempered, overbearing crosspatch, whatever that means. Dax used to beat Sisko regularly at bare fist Juro counterpunch, and Miles gives Keiko a bell. He did.
Yeah.
And she was thrilled. Like, does he never get her stuff to where she's like, oh my God, it's thank you for the bell.
Thanks for this bell.
Stop sneaking up on me, Keiko.
No, because you know how in the old days the school people would ring the bell to start school.
It was really cute. There were a lot of really cute moments.
It's so cute. I love when Molly said, "Okay, mommy."
That was one.
She's so adorable.
Cute.
Yeah.
Was that her first episode on Deep Space Nine? I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think so.
I think so.
For both Keiko and Molly.
I did it. I guess in hindsight, there's so many moments that I didn't appreciate the first go around watching it that I do now. After having watched the relationships build and form and develop. And one of the things that popped out to me was, Quark and Odo back and forth between each other. When he says the O'Briens are fighting, when Quark says, word on the street, word on the grapevine says that the O'Briens are fighting or something. And then he goes on to say, she doesn't like it here. And Odo's response was, who does? And I just thought it was, I was like, that's a great delivery. I love the way he did that. The other thing I thought was great, and just a special thing for me to hear in hindsight, was when Odo's kind of going over in his head about relationships and saying, I just never understand why humans, need to couple. And I thought, wow, this is a great arc for Odo, because we're watching the beginning of his storyline and he's like anti-relationship. He gives all the reasons why, because if I want to do this and she wants to do this, I have to.
And we're all watching knowingly. We're like, you say that now, Odo.
Yeah.
But...
yeah. but you'll be watching that Klingon opera sooner than later.
And and it's Kira who defends him the most in this episode, or most vehemently above everyone else, which is awesome.
Which is great. Which is like, this is just like such a great foreshadow for their relationship and how it's going to eventually. Like, she's so defensive for him. He's so anti-couple, and I don't want that. I love seeing the budding, the beginning of something, and now I know where it's going to go. At that time, you didn't know where it was going to go, and it was fun to see it just kind of unfold in front of our face. I also like how Quark defends Odo too. He says he's no killer. And the guy says, "Well, I thought you were his worst enemy." He says, "Well, that maybe I'm his closest friend," or something to that effect. But I thought that was great that Quark steps up and he's like, "Yeah, he might be this, he might be that, but he's no killer," and he defends Odo. Great kind of foreshadow for their, enemy frenemies type of relationship.
Yeah, it was a great moment to show us, kind of establish their relationship prior to the first episode and then up to this point. And it tells us that they've known each other for quite some time, so they do have kind of a rapport, even though they appear to be enemies. They're much more than that. And Quark standing up for Odo really shows that too.
And Odo, it seemed to me that Odo was seriously asking Quark if he could get a job with him, basically. And then because when Quark was like, you almost had me going there, Odo was like, oh yeah, because Odo doesn't joke really, so I think he kind of meant it. And to go even deeper, I think that Quark knew that Odo was not joking, but he was pretending to think he was joking so that he could say no without having to actually say no, to where he's like, I know you're just kidding. I know you don't really mean that. That I feel like that was the underlying meaning there. Maybe I took it the wrong way, but I think that's what it was Quark was just saying like, oh, I know you don't really mean it, rather than saying no thanks, Odo.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I saw. It's funny because in that moment, I felt like he was contemplating how he could use those talents of a shapeshifter to his advantage.
He did.
So it was going through his head like, how could that work? And then he thought to himself, but then I would have to reveal all my
no
my
deal
escapades. No deal. I don't want you to know what I'm up to. Just great back and forth between the two of them. In the beginning, he said to him, "You're almost making an honest living, Quark." It's like, you're almost making an honest living, right? He hit him with that. And then later on, during that scene that you're talking about, Ryan, when he offers him a job, or when he says, "Do you have a job for me?" Odo says, "I've turned you into a better crook."
Steel sharpens steel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just love the back and forth between them. Really good relationship building. Very good also with Sisko and Dax, kind of like going back through their history. But also with Sisko and Bashir, when he tells Bashir, like, "Hey, look, you don't have to worry about me. I'm not trying to get with Dax. I look at Dax as like my old buddy from back in the day. And I could tell you about the 7-foot twins, but I think I should. I'd rather not." He paused on that 7-foot twin sister story, but I just like the conversations. It shows that they're relationship building, that everybody's spending time to get to know each other and what their tendencies are. Also, how they can be there for each other as well. Like. Kira is trying to be there for Odo. Quark is trying to be there for Odo. Keiko is trying to be there for the kids. who she sees, having nowhere to go and nothing to do, and which is a whole nother subject that I thought, what a great thing. When Keiko says to Rom, she's trying to convince Rom, why don't you let Nog come to my school? And Nog, Rom's like, sure, he'll never listen to women. He'll never listen to you because you're a woman, And, I love the way he says, little lady, little lady.
Little lady.
What do you know about Ferengi education, right? I just thought I just loved it, right? But then she giving her pitch, I thought gave the great pitch when she says, consider the advantages your son will have once he learns about other cultures.
Right.
Keiko, in that moment, told us exactly how Nog's future was going to play out.
Yeah.
In just that one sentence, in that one line, when she says, consider the advantages your son will have once he learns about other cultures. And I think that's true for all of us, in our own upbringing in life. The more we have knowledge about other cultures, the more we have advantages in our own life. And,
absolutely.
And I think that just played out so well for Nog's storyline, who was abrasive, who was reluctant to get to know anything outside of whatever his comfort zone was, and expanding his mind to learning about other cultures, to embrace the idea of more than just whatever he grew up knowing, is what makes Nog a great Ferengi in the long run. It's going to make Nog the man he becomes. And I think it's just a great foreshadow for Keiko to say that she was right.
Well, and how that expands like a ripple in the pond to Rom himself, and him bettering himself because he sees how his son has bettered himself by knowing these humans and other species.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's she really lays it out well. The other thing is, I love the interplay between Odo and Sisko in this episode.
Man, when Sisko smacked him down for a second, because Odo was making good points, I get it, but Sisko had to remind him, hey, this isn't a debate. We're not
right.
You are not in charge of what the rules are around here. Sisko barely is, but he certainly is more in charge. He still has to answer to Starfleet, but he certainly is more in charge than Odo. And there was a moment there where he kind of had to remind Odo, bro, talk all you want, but if you can't do the job that's laid out in front of you, I'll find someone else who can. And Kira's like, I'll do it. she can handle it.
No, I thought it was great because Sisko says, if you can't work within the rules, I'll find someone who can.
Yep.
Right.
And he just shuts it down in the beginning. And then when Sisko finally does decide that he has to take him off the case because it's a conflict of interest, and he comes into the office, and when he tells Odo to sit down, he's like, sit down. When Sisko says it like that, it's like, okay.
Oh no, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah, like, okay. So he sits down, and then they go through their whole thing, and Sisko says something to the effect like, I don't believe you did it or anything. I believe you're innocent. And Odo's like, really? And he does that really.
That was such a great delivery of just that one word. I put that in my notes as well.
Yes.
Really? We're like,
the way he said it. Yep.
Odo don't believe him.
Odo don't believe him. And Odo's out for himself because he does come out in another great line when he says, you don't know me. Boom, right off top. You don't know me. It's like Odo's like matter of fact. Like he doesn't joke. So I kind of agree with you, Ryan, that he wasn't joking when he put that proposal in front of Quark. He just wanted to know what other options he had in front of him, because he was thinking that maybe I won't be doing security anymore.
Well, sorry, I was just going to say, you know who we do know, but I'll let you, what, did you have something else? It seemed like there was more to it.
The last line after he says, "You don't know me, I'll take care of my own best interests." And it was just like a mic drop type of moment when he turns on Sisko. Yeah. So love that scene.
Speaking of people we know and our own best interests, let's give some special thanks to a few people, some of which you may see in a moment. Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arukin, Titus Moeller, Darlena Marie, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, Anna Post, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neil Akasaka, Justine Norton Kurtzen, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Jed Thompson, Luther Haynes Jr. Dr. Courtney Lewis, Beth Ernest, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, of course, and also, of course, Jason Oken. Everybody stick around. We have Dennis Madalone next. You don't want to miss that. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and, of course, Malissa Longo. Let's just cut to it. It's Dennis Danger Madalone. First of all, I've seen some things that called you Danger Dennis Madalone, but it's got to be your middle name, right?
Yep. That was a nickname given to me by the actor Robert Conrad. And if you remember him, he starred in Wild Wild West and Baba Black Sheep, and just, he's a major star from the 60s, 70s, 80s, the 90s. One day, I did some crazy world record motorcycle jump on the Diana Shore show. And then I flew into Chicago to work with Robert Conrad on a movie of the week that he was starring in. And we went to a bar after we wrapped that day, and I don't drink, so I'm drinking Coca-Colas, and they're all having drinks. And he opens up a National Enquirer, and there's a little article about him starring in the movie that we're working on. And then he opens up the center page, and it's all me, Dennis Madalone, doing a world record motorcycle jump. And, it was just this crazy world record jump I did. And Conrad looked at his little article and my big one, and he goes, "Well, excuse Mr. Danger. Danger. And then next day we go to work, he's calling me Danger. And then next week, Danger. And I can't get away from it. So you can't give yourself a nickname. Somebody has to call you that. And he started it. And now I have dogs named Danger, Danger Jr. It just goes on,
That is a great story. Robert Conrad, that's who we got to thank.
Yep, he's the one. What's funny was a year later, I'm coordinating a pilot called 10 Speed and Brown Shoe with Jeff Goldblum and Ben Vereen. And we're in San Francisco doing this major chase. It's Stephen J. Kennel production and Alex Beaton producer. And we're doing this major chase, and out of nowhere, this electrical truck pulls into our chase. It must have came from an alleyway and just literally gets right in front of me in the middle of a high-speed chase. And I pull over, and an electrical truck pulls over, and they cut, of course. And they're all talking, what happened? Where'd that truck come from? And I'm looking at the truck. I'm 5 feet from the back of it. And in the back of the truck, there's a sign saying, "Keep back 10 feet." Oh, no, it said, "Danger, keep back 10 feet" with lightning bolts. So 2 weeks later, I came up finally with "Danger" on the back of my shirt, "Keep back 10 feet."
Nice.
So
brilliant.
All these things were aiming toward the Danger name, so I just grabbed it.
So Dennis, we've been talking about you for 4 years.
Yes.
Just constantly, and Cirroc's always pointing you out. He's like, "That was Dennis Madalone. That was Dennis Madalone," and or these stunts. we're trying to watch. First of all, I'm not sure what's going on here. You lit yourself on fire. You jump out of buildings. You do all this stuff, and you look younger than I do. I don't get it. But anyway, we'll let that slide. I don't know how catching on fire and jumping out of buildings makes you look so young, but it works somehow. Cirroc, can you just talk to this man for a second? Tell him how much we've spoken of him over the last few years, just constantly.
Well, first of all, we always loved you, Dennis. Your energy that you bring on the set, just really amazing and super infectious. The passion that you have for the work that you do is just obvious. When you meet Dennis, you're like, yeah, he lives and breathes this stunt lifestyle, and you're just an amazing guy. You're also an instructor, so you have to instruct a lot of the actors before they do their stunts, and so most of the choreography and all of the instruction is coming from you, and you're great at that as well. So, Dennis, I've always known you to be just a great professional and living on the edge and not afraid to take risk and chances and be an amazing guy at the same time. Always had the sexy hair, so that's consistent. And
yes.
and it always wrap that the bandana around your knee there. That was your style, and I always felt like you were a wrestler. Like I looked at you in the same light as I looked up at my famous wrestlers, like the Hulk Hogan's of the world. So that's how I feel about you, Dennis. I really love you, man.
I love you too, man. And but you're the same thing. Passion is you're just born. I was in New Jersey. I knew nothing about stunts or movies or actors, and I was 5 years old. I started throwing myself down the stairs and jumping off the roof, and my mom went and had my brain tested to see if something was wrong. But I knew that there was something fun about, doing crazy action, and it drew attention, and I liked that. And I didn't know by the time I was a senior, I wrestled, and I pole vaulted on the track team and broke the school record. And I started thinking, wow, anything is possible. And I started thinking about Hollywood, and and people were saying that you're a stuntman, and I really didn't know what that was. And it reminded me of a story when I was 8 years old. I was watching TV downstairs in New Jersey. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and I fell asleep. And my dad woke me up and said, "Come on, Denny, it's time to go to bed." And I said, "No, I'm not sleeping," And I'm watching James Cagney. And James Cagney was on TV, and I loved watching him. He was my favorite actor growing up as a kid. And my dad said, "You really like James Cagney, don't you?" He goes, "Do you want to be like James Cagney?" And I said, "No, I want to be the guys he's beating up." And that was really weird. And my dad looked at me like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to be those guys." And James Cagney was beating up like 9 guys at the same time in this movie. Yeah. And that's when it first clicked. And then years later, my senior year is when everyone started saying, "You should go to Hollywood. And 2 weeks after high school, I came out to Hollywood with 2 suitcases, knew nobody. I was on foot, Hollywood and Vine. And within 24 hours, I found the only guy in the world training stunt people, and only 5 or 6 guys he was training. And his name is Paul Stater. And Paul Stater was an iconic stuntman from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s, 80s. And he coordinated like the Irwin Allen movies back then, like Swarm and Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno. Those were the big blockbuster action movies in the 60s and 70s. And so for me to meet him and him take me into a school was what launched me in the business. And it was like only about 8 of us in the school. But as we busted in the business a year and a half later, we all stuck together. So when I started running shows, I hired all my buddies, and we're still together after all these years. So, wow. But it's passion. It's the other day I was on the set. I was still the same crazy kid with that energy. And you got to just love being around happy people, creating stuff, getting hugs from everyone because they got some cool shots, eating free craft service. It's crazy. It's fun, you know?
Red vines. Always red vines.
So please forgive my ignorance in this subject. But Dennis, is there a guild that you belong to for stuntmen? Is there like the Screen Actors Guild, the Directors Guild? Is there a union that protects your job?
Yeah, it's funny. James Cagney was one of the 5 or 6 actors that formed the Screen Actors Guild, and I didn't know that till years later. But he formed that union, and that's the same union that stunt people, actors, and now background people are in. So it's all one union, SAG-AFTRA. So
right.
Mm-hmm.
So you say there. Yeah, how is it? I mean, I guess God, when it's something's meant to be. But you say within 24 hours, you meet the one and only guy who you could meet. Like it's like, how is that possible? It's like that's amazing.
It's impossible. It's impossible. Remember, I'm a kid from New Jersey. I know no one. I'm walking on Hollywood and Vine, Sunset and Vine.
Yeah.
And what happened was literally within 10 seconds of me getting off the bus, a guy came up to me and goes, "You look lost." And that's how I looked, lost, with homeless, And I go, "Yeah, I'm here to be a stuntman." And he went to a phone booth. Yeah, they had phone booths back then. And he went to a phone booth, and within a minute, he came out of the phone booth and gave me the name Paul Stater, Stunt School, Santa Monica, Main Street. And there you were. I went there the next day, and there was Paul.
Wow.
I kept the $2 I had. I gave him 50 to join, and that was it. I just met, if it wasn't for Paul, he was the man that helped hundreds of people and never asked for anything. I was just proud that he was able to give back of stuff that he has gotten in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s. And, but the group of guys that were in that school, like I said, Tom Morga, who worked on Kenny Lesko worked on Deep Space. All those guys you saw with me were all from my school, And so it was nothing better than bringing your team in that you don't have to say much to, because they you don't have to explain anything, because we grew up together. It's like, get in there, you're going to get phasered and fall 8 feet to, and they just do it.
Yeah.
And so it's great to have people that are so talented and also your friends. But my doors were always open to use all the new talent that was coming in and the older generation. So I always just used just all the people with talent and the people with happy energy. There was only a few people, thousands, that I would hire. Didn't quite have the energy. Mm-hmm. And it was okay having them, but they weren't like, they were like, "I'm going to wait in my dressing room until you need me." And it wasn't like hanging out and with the guys and all that. But that was okay, because that was just a few people that just didn't quite have the excitement of being on the set all the time. And, we all get burnt out too, right? On Deep Space Nine with the smoke on the set all the time. And that's, I have to just take a time out or catch up on the weekend and regroup, because the hours were brutal on the show, right? 18, 16 hours a day. And, but the Deep Space Nine crew, they were amazing, because I always loved everyone on the crew, because they were there every day, as you know, right? And maybe me weren't there all the time. We had days off, right? We got some breaks.
Yeah.
They didn't need us. And so whenever I showed up, you and me, we were a breath of fresh air. If we had like 3 or 4 days off, we show up with all this energy and we give them a boost. They feed off. And I remember walking down the set, and the crew was so tired from, the hours and the smoke on the set. When I showed up, they were, it was like, what are we going to do today? Who are we going to kill? This is great,
Exciting.
So we knew that, guys like you and me and the other stars, we have, not that I'm a star, but we all have the power to lift the crew with our happy energy,
Yeah.
on a
And
bogging
you
day.
always did. You always did.
You
I
do.
remember that about you. You had that great energy, Dennis. You were always just like excited. And, I remember you teaching actors beforehand. I distinctly remember you teaching about reactions to punches. So you would say, instead of just doing this, do
Yeah.
you do this thing and over accentuate the impact of
Yeah.
the blows or whatnot. And I used to love watching you do. I'm like, Mo, he really sells that punch, when he does it.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was just in me to always. I like to use the word overact. For me, I was loud. I remember my first few years busting the business. My energy was huge, because I learned from actually Glenn Wilder and Chuck Courtney and Paul Stater. The energy. If you're just when you're doing a fight scene, you don't just you're a stuntman doesn't mean you got to be quiet. So all my guys and me, we just it's all that.
I love it.
No,
love
it's
it.
all that. It's all big,
Yeah.
and that was the show to go big. Phaser hits are big. The fights are big. Klingon. So everything was perfect for me to be the over actor I am when it comes to stunt performers. But I remember the sound people hundreds of times used to come up to me. When you guys are fighting in the background, can you keep it a little more quiet? And I'm looking at them like, there isn't a chance. Because we are loud. We are loud. Can you imagine fighting like this? Like there's nothing there. Gotta be that. And so when I get new people on the show, and even actors, sometimes they're quiet. I get their energy up where it's loud and big. I just worked on a feature last week, and it was a comedy, and all the actors were overacting because it was that kind of scene. It's like kind of like a Three Stooges. Everything was big. So I lifted the actors up and just told them, I want you to go for the Academy Award on this one. When you get shot, just soak it up and feel it and drop and way overboard. And the director, it's exactly what he wanted. He wanted overacting, big, crazy. So I'm not going to come short on the overacting. That's for sure.
So cool. Hey,
did you ever run into any problems on DS9 or any one of the other Star Trek shows? Any like major safety type issues or something where you're like, oh, this is dangerous?
No, because I just always had a good team, and I always want, number one thing is this is all supposed to be fun. We're just you, me, the director. We're all here. We're all kids in a candy store on a set, and this is all just supposed to be fun. And so there should be no danger. There's stunts that we do that we concern and we make it safe as possible. But stunt people like me and the other guys and gals, it's like playing football every day. We're going to get bruises. We're going to get, sore ribs and scratches here and there. But that's like playing football. We're stunt people. But we don't want actors to get scratches. We don't want them to get bruises. So we really, really babysit the actors because our goal is to bring everybody home that night. Everyone wants to go home when we yell rap. And that's the goal. Have fun, make sure the people in front of camera and behind the camera are safe, and just do some fun stuff and get everybody home.
Yeah.
So, Dennis, here's a couple things wanted to point out here. You sent in a couple pictures. Of course, anybody can just Google you, and they'll see all these. But can you tell everybody what this is? Besides you jumping out of a really high building.
Buddy, that's the story. Let me tell you. That was in 1980. I was doubling John Savage. It was a movie called Inside Moves. And the director was Richard Donner, who's famous director when you look him up. He's just, I didn't know how it was. I was just a kid at the time. But they brought me in to do the high fall. And I remember right before it was 152 feet. The airbag was old school, small. When I remember looking out the window, the airbag looked about, that big, like
a like a Tic Tac.
Yeah, it would look. And then, this was bigger than I've jumped before, but I was confident that number one, I was going to hit it, and number two, that I was going to be able to turn in time to land safely. But it was like twice the height I've ever gone. But I remember right before I jumped, I asked to talk to the director, Richard Donner, and the AD said, he doesn't want to talk to you. And I go, what's up? He goes, I can't explain it to you, but he doesn't want to talk to you. I said, well, you tell him, and this was my way of, pumping myself up. I said, you tell him, because I don't know Richard Donner, but he's a pretty famous director. I go, you tell him that when I come off that airbag, he better be the first one to hug me, and then I walked away. And then I went up the elevator to do the jump. And of course, I didn't mean any of that. I was just, having fun, busting chops, and psyching up for the fall. So I remember going up in the elevator, and I decided to skip the 12th floor where I'm jumping and go to the 15th. And I'm going up the elevator. I go, we're going to the 15th floor. And I hear the second AD go on his walkie-talkie, I don't know what he's doing. He's going to the 15th floor. What's he doing? We're supposed to jump from the 12th. All the cameras are set for 12. And we go up to the 15th. And this is a real building where every office has a different business in. It's an iconic building. It's still there. I go by there all the time, and I always look up there and go, I'd like to jump again. So I go in on the 15th floor, and I go into where the 12th floor would be, the office, 3 floors up. And I go knock on the door, and there's lady secretaries and guys in there, and it's like 30 people, typing. And I said, do you mind if I just look out your window? I'm getting ready to jump 3 stories below. What? People going, he's jumping, this guy. And the manager came out and said, yeah, take a peek. And so I opened the window and I looked, and the airbag looked like, oh my gosh, it was like, you could barely see it. My stunt safety team looked like little ants, the crowd down below. I mean, it was just, and I looked at that for a while, and the second AD's on the walkie-talkie going, I don't know what he's doing. Is he going to jump from there? It was crazy. And I go, we're good. We'll go down to the 12th. And I go down to the 12th, and then I look out the window, and suddenly I look at the AD. I go, I'm ready to jump. So what did I do? I've never done that before. I went up another 35 feet and looked at this small airbag, and then I went down to the 152 mark, and the airbag looked bigger. And I was just, psychologically, it was like, I'll jump from here all day. This is a lot bigger than I just saw. So I was really psyched. Yeah. And I remember the AD saying, okay, we're rolling. And it's a little ledge I have to step on. It's like 6 inches wide, and I'm going to stand on there for 3 or 4 seconds. And in the movie, John Savage tries to commit suicide. And he ends up living, and then he's handicapped through the movie. And that's kind of what the base of the movie is. So I remember stepping on the ledge, and I look, and I see like 3,000 people, normal people in LA, covered in the streets, cheering, rooting on for the fall. And suddenly the AD says, come back in. We have a camera jam. And I go, oh, man, I'm like second from jumping. So I come back in. And then I hear the crowd, the 3,000 people, boo, chicken, you. I mean,
it's like, no, I'm not chickening out.
Oh man,
the camera needs to reload.
They were booing me. It was like, it was not they were not Laker fans.
Yeah. Hey, you come up here and let's see you try.
Yeah.
Like it's easy.
I mean, like that's never happened. I mean, I'm getting booed, and I haven't even done anything yet. So I tell the AD, listen, make sure all your cameras are rolling, because next time I step out there, I'm jumping, because the crowd is crazy. And he yells, okay, all 5 cameras are rolling. Are you sure? Yeah. So I step out there, and the crowd is still crazy. And while they're rolling film, I do this to the crowd, I'm asking them to, to give me
Keep
a chance.
Yeah.
And man, it was unbelievable. It was like the crowd just, you could hear a pin drop from 3,000 yells to nothing. And I knew within the next 4 seconds, I better jump or I'm going to lose the crowd,
Yeah.
And I just went into a zone for a few seconds, and then I went into my jump. And all I can tell you that it felt like slow motion. It was historic and a world record at the time. It was like a world record face-off jump. And I was screaming all the way down. I mean, I remember someone said after the high fall, "Wow, it really sounded like you were screaming." I said, "I was screaming." It was real. I was really,
Yeah.
So
wow, that's awesome.
So I hit the airbag, and my guys are pulling me out, and it was slow motion. It was just magical. And out of nowhere, this guy bear hugs me. It's Richard Donner, the director. And he's hugging me, and he won't let go. And he's got tears in his eyes, and he's all emotional. And this is the first time I met him, and he's got tears in his eyes, and he hugs me, and for like a minute, and he finally let me go. And I looked at him. I go, "You want me to do another? I could do another." And he goes, "Are you crazy, kid? I'm not killing that one." He goes, that's a print. It's a print.
Oh, that's
so
so
I found
cool.
out. So 2 days later, I find out I'm reading the article about Richard Donner, about the movie he's making. And in there, he tells the story of this kid that's going to do a high fall. That's me. And he didn't want to meet me because he had a dream 2 days before the fall that whoever was doing the high fall was going to be killed.
Oh.
And it tore him apart. It tore him apart. And this is how much it hurt him, that he didn't want to meet me. But 2 days before, after he woke up from the dream, he sent a second unit to the building, and they threw dummies out of the window all day. A dummy, a dummy, a dummy. And they looked at the dailies the next day, and they looked like a dummy. It never looked good. And so they were caught in the jam, and they brought me, of course. I knew I was doing the fall. I didn't know they were trying to bump me out of the job because of his dream. So it was pretty miraculous. It made him really happy that scary dreams don't come true all the time, And he went on to direct so many movies with lots of high falls. So he overcame that dream that he had. He did so many movies with major high falls and stuff like that. So
that's incredible. We only have you for another minute here, Dennis, and thank you so much for your time. But Melissa, you wanted to jump in very quickly as well, right?
Well, I just wanted to say a couple of thank yous. One, thanks for coming to Aron's memorial. That meant a lot. Aron Eisenberg, his widow. And also, thank you for the sweet messages that you sent, text messages you sent to his phone, because I did read them and they meant a lot. So,
Well, I want to tell you something about Aron. I love him, and I feel him with me all the time. And I wasn't with him a lot. But when you're with him just for a few seconds, it's a lifetime. Because his energy, as you know, is here, and it's big, and he's bigger than life, and he's a golden gift to the world. And a story that I've not shared with anyone, I'll share with you right now, is that after the day before Aron's gathering, I went into a 7-Eleven, and there was these stuffed toys, little toy statues that you press the foot or the hand and it sings songs. And I bought it. And I brought it home. And it played the song,
Oh, the Werewolves of London.
Wow.
That was his song.
So why did I get that gift to bring home this cat statue? I have it right there. It's in my pantry, and it sings that song. And I go to his gathering, and then the son plays. That's he told us about that song. Wow, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you tell me. I mean, he always used to love that song where he played it so much, everyone got tired of it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that tracks.
And,
yeah.
and it was just, that was my gift, was to be connected that way, to bring this toy home and the next day hear about that song, which I really didn't know of.
Wow.
And yet there was, and I wanted to give that to the family, and I wasn't able to reach out. And I have that. I wanted to give it because it was so special to find that gift and not know that was going to be his favorite crazy song, you know?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That song. That is incredible.
Yeah, every time that song comes on my my Amazon Music, I text it over to Melissa. But then it started happening like every day. I'm like, okay, I get it. I can't keep texting her every day about the same thing. That's amazing, Dennis.
That song is incredible. I mean, if you really think of it, it's really addicting, you know. And so I must have played it for like, you know, I go in my pantry and there it is. I'm getting snacks and I play so, but you know, Aaron always said, I want to do stunts. I want to do stunts. And finally we got to have him do a stunt where we shot him. Remember in the scene where I guess he loses his leg, right? And he did his own stunt. I mean, it was a hard flyback, and he hit his back on the ground. And I never knew that he was battling. Because that's a pretty tough cookie to want to fly back, hit the ground when he's going through, you know, things that he's battling for physically. And then I had the honor to play the One-Eye Marauder, where he came in with a tray of food and he got to whack me and knock me out and free, you know, Nana. So that was so cool that I got to shoot him and then he got to beat me up. So it's really beautiful.
It's great. Wow, what awesome. A great story.
That is beautiful. Thank goodness we caught that before we left. Yeah. Thanks for saying that, Melissa. And thank you for that story, Dennis. Dennis, this has been the thrill of a lifetime. We truly hope it's not a one-time thrill. We hope to see you again at any point you'd like. We'd love to bring you back because there are way more pictures to talk about and way more stories and episodes you are featured in, whether you're acting, whether you're doing stunts, whether you're stunt coordinating, or most likely all of the above at the same time. But thank you so much, Dennis. We hope to see you soon, okay?
Hey, listen, here's the plan. If you called me tonight, tomorrow, next week, I'm with you guys 100% whenever you want to talk, okay? So anytime. I love you.
We love you too.
All right, buddy.
This guy lives up to all the legends that Cirroc told us about. We really appreciate you, Dennis. We'll see you soon. Everybody, stick around. We'll be right back on the 7th Rule. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th Rule with Cirroc. Lofton.
Hello, hello.
It's the free-for-all, one of 2 segments. Melissa Longo is here, of course. Carrie Schwent is also here. That is a fun background. Looks like oil and water or something like that.
Yeah, the bubbles.
Jason Oken is here as well, wearing a really cool shirt with a bunch of ships on it. Eve England is, guess what? Out in Wales. Faith Howell's floating outside of Deep Space Nine. Mai is live in Tokyo wearing, who are you wearing? Cirroc, Lofton, and everybody, Aaron and Ryan. Goldie Scott Jensen is here being evil. And Aron Eisenberg is going to be joining us via a previous recording, our previous review of A Man Alone. So we'll bring up that clip right now. Let's see what he has to say. One moment. There we go. Let's give this a try.
And because Jake is such a wonderful human being who teaches Nog how to read, that trajectory of Nog moves into a much bigger paradigm, and the rock that's thrown into the water and the ripples that happen because of that one action have major consequences 4, 5, 6 years, 6 years later.
So why'd you pick that clip, Melissa? Great one.
Well, it's interesting because we were kind of talking about this earlier in the deep dive review about Keiko was really the one who set those things in motion, but it was Jake who ultimately furthers those ripples in the pond, those actions that Keiko initiated from her not wanting to be on Deep Space Nine. So it's I thought it was interesting to look at where Jake and Nog kind of started and how they progressed the story so beautifully through the 7 years, and the ripples in the pond are indicative of the 7 years of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, good point. And Cirroc taught Aron how to read too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
And you know what? That was the other thing is the joy that they had when they were pulling that prank. I think we all have had moments like that with our friends, not necessarily with grainy and bowl lights, but
but some with that, yeah.
But when you pull a prank and you just are just laughing and you're just feeling the joy of that moment, sharing a special moment with your friend, that kind of brought back good memories of, okay, this is, these are guys that have nothing to do and they're hanging out, just making good, clean fun, at least at this point, but still just getting into kids' fun stuff,
Trying to find a picture, Cirroc. When you mentioned hanging out with your friends and laughing, it reminded me of a picture, and I can't find it now, but there's a really good one of you and Aron laughing on the stage at Star Trek Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You know that one, Melissa?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
clearly one of you said some kind of snide remark to the other person, and you guys are sharing a good laugh about it. I can't find it though.
You two were the only ones in on the joke.
Yeah. On stage. Nobody else is loud. Nobody else knows what's going on.
Yeah. It was great.
It was one of those moments where somebody says something and you hear it in a different way. So we were on that panel and somebody, I think it was Mark Zachary, was talking, and
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
And he said something I don't know. I don't remember the exact thing he said, but it was something that you can hear and interpret in a different way. So I think he's, like, oh yeah, I like to receive things on both ends, or something that we both looked at each other and he's like, did you hear that? And I was like, yeah, I heard that. And we could not hold it back. So it was one of those kind of moments. And that is that's the moment, two people laughing, giggling, having fun, and sharing a special moment. That's what I felt when I watched Jake and Nog.
Do you actually remember that moment on the set?
I don't. The one where we were. No, I don't. And I was wondering about the mesh that we were looking through as we were peering at the two people in the commissary as they were eating. I was like, where is that mesh exactly? Where would it be placed? Because I don't remember anywhere on the in the little eating cubby hole where there would be a panel to stare through that had the mesh fabric. That was something that I think they constructed just for that shot. Because I couldn't figure out where that was. And no, I don't remember it. I remember that Jom stick though, and chasing him down in the promenade, holding that thing. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I was wondering about that too, where that was, that weird kind of grate thing.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, there was no mention of the Jumja stick on Aron Eisenberg's part. Sadly, I would like to hear what he had to say about that. But
glop on a stick is what it said in the script.
Glop on a stick. Wait a minute, we did see that.
He always said glop on a stick.
There it is. Okay, yeah, we can do that then. One moment, please. And everybody, you can go check out this review. It is T7R episode 19, A Man Alone. And you can hear Aaron's takes on this. Oh, wait, let me go back a tiny bit more because it looks like there's some good stuff going on there. All right, here we go. So check this out. Here's Mr. Aron Eisenberg telling us a bit more. Like how that happened, because I couldn't quite remember. I remember it had the rat sickle, but I
glop on a stick.
The what stick?
Glop on a stick. And that was the scene that I auditioned with, meeting Jake. But if you listen to it, there's an audio issue at the my first two lines, so that part of the scene, and then the second half of the scene. And I'm pretty sure they used the ADR looping when I went back in after we shot it to redo the audio.
I did notice a difference in sound, but I couldn't tell what I was hearing. So yeah, glop on a stick. And Cirroc, you were talking about the audio issues.
Yeah.
We were both kind of harping on that a little bit. You guys, did any of you notice any audio issues in this episode?
No.
Scott.
I
should have.
I should have.
Why are you calling Scott out, Melissa?
Because
She's
the
right.
look on
She's
his
100%.
face.
It's like, damn, I didn't catch that. I must have been like playing something on my phone too at the same time. It had to be.
He was like, "Oops."
Did someone say audio?
Oh yeah, I totally heard it. Absolutely.
Yeah, there was a few. There was a lot of ADR work done in this episode, and when you do ADR work, the sounds they're just not going to match up right. Even the ambient noise in the room sounds, which, by the way, when we do a take, usually at the end of us filming, sound will record for about 10, 20 seconds at the end of us filming.
Mm-hmm.
So we're,
room tone.
Room tone. And they use that room tone for exactly these purposes of ADR, because they'll take the room tone and then add that into the post-production voiceover work and blend the two so that they try to make it sound like you were just talking in that room at that time. But there's always a difference. And in this particular episode, I thought the ADR work was noticeable. And if it's noticeable, then that's not good. So
when you did the ADR, were you in a small booth when you guys did that? Did you go in and record with a mic in a little booth?
Yeah, it's actually a huge booth.
Okay.
The booth is like it's a room. It's a huge room with a microphone, a standing microphone. It's not like how you see a recording artist in a small little booth, with a podium in front of them. With their
I didn't realize it was so big. How big was this? Because all the ones I've seen, like what Scott's saying, they're usually fairly small, super padded, of course, but I didn't realize that.
No, this one was big. It was, they would have a theater size screen playing back the episode.
Oh.
So you're looking at it like on jumbo. It's not
Jumja.
like Yes, it's not a TV screen that you're looking at. You're looking at like a whole big movie theaters type of screen.
Kind of
In
did
some
that
cases.
on Cosmos. For the,
for the Loop group. Yeah.
Right.
That large room will also help with matching the acoustics of, being on a set like you guys were on. I can't imagine that Mike and that with everything bouncing everywhere with all those corridors and counters and all, no wide open side on one side. I couldn't imagine how much stuff bounced around in there. So I think the big ADR rooms probably helped a lot with that. I wonder if some of the other shows that were in smaller sets had a smaller ADR room to kind of match that up.
Yeah, I remember. As a matter of fact, the room was so big. Some.
How big was it?
At some point, so there were different sound stages that you could use inside the same facility, and one of those rooms would have like an entire orchestra in it, like all the instruments and everybody's chairs sitting down. It was big enough to put an orchestra in there. And we were just filming, doing our one voiceover work. But if you wanted to, there could be 50 people in there conducting music.
Like music recording.
Yeah.
Wow. So up next, here's another thought from our good friend, Mr. Aron Eisenberg. And it goes a little something like this.
Well, take that one step further with Bashir and Sisko at Quarks, and Sisko saying, well, if you want to go date her, hey, I'm cool with that. And I'm thinking to myself, really? It's like, isn't there a problem here?
Isn't there protocol?
Yeah. Isn't there some kind of future protocol about dating each other that are working together? But apparently not in Starfleet. Hey,
backwards.
Make it happen. Basically, hey, if you need the runabout, I'm sure there's some nice places on Bajor that you can take her out to. Hey, I'll reserve it for you, on Saturday.
Well, Melissa, why did you choose that snippet?
Because Aron was so funny. Really? The way he said, really? Him questioning Sisko being okay with Bashir asking Dax out, which I kind of have a counter to his point, in that most of these Starfleet people are on ships with only other Starfleet people, so who else are they gonna date? It's not like they're on Earth dating, having a bigger pool to date within, and maybe he's not into Bajorans, Well, we find out that he is later, but there's they're the same rank, and it's not like they work together every single day. She's in science and he's in medical, and they've got different jobs that they're doing, so they're not directly working with each other. So
that's a good point, Melissa. Like who else are you supposed to date? We're stuck here in the middle of space on this station.
Exactly.
Well, for most Starfleet officers, yes. But like Deep Space Nine officers, it's 90% other Bajorans and whatever else, and some starships like the Enterprise, would have like 1,000 people on it, and maybe 100 are Starfleet. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that Starfleet officers should be able to date other Starfleet officers where they were? Faith is going to break. She is nodding so hard. She's like, absolutely. Starting with Riker.
I'm a big shipper. All the ships.
Yeah.
We need Homer here going, no.
I know Anne Marie would be on my side, though, so.
Probably right.
All right.
Yeah, I'm on your side for this.
Donna saying yes.
In the chat. Nice.
Because we've seen so many good relationships come out of it. I mean, as long as it's two consenting adults,
right,
engaged in their own, responsible behavior, I don't have a problem with it.
right.
Well, Eve thinks that they should not be engaging in all this tally-hoos, or I don't know what they call them over there. But what do you think, Eve? Do you think a captain should be able to be like, hey, none of that?
I mean, I get why you'd need people to be able to do that, but I suppose in the same way in work office environments, you might just need to disclose it because there could be an HR problem. So I think as long as they know about it, that's probably not a problem. Yeah.
Also, how have HR? Sorry, what were you saying, Mike?
I was going to say, doesn't it impact things in a military situation? Wouldn't you want to date outside of your unit so that when when it hits the fan, that you can actually react without having emotions involved?
I disagree with that because I love all the people. Not in that way, but I love all the people. I care deeply about all the people. So why is it any different? If we're in a battle situation, I'm going to be worried about everybody. It doesn't matter whether I'm sleeping with them.
Yeah,
sleep with everybody, and then you have equal.
Yeah, let's do that too.
Right, and then if we have a problem with Bashir and Dax dating, then we should have a problem with Riker and Troy getting married, and Jadzia and Worf getting married, and all of these couples that are in Starfleet and are together, like B'Elanna and Paris.
Damn, you're right. It's rampant in Star Trek, isn't it? What do you think, Jason?
Yeah.
Well, it goes back. I mean, we're talking obviously, the Roddenberry universe and Star Trek. It goes back, I think, to the original series. I mean, if you look at the Balance of Terror, you have basically a wedding ceremony right at the beginning of the show. So it goes back to those kinds of roots. I mean, it ends tragically, which is kind of shows what can happen. But and then the other side of it, I think, is sort of this Roddenberry, perfected human being that can interact in this kind of environment and be basically an adult or mature about it. So I think if you're looking at that universe specifically based on its sort of parameters, there shouldn't be an issue. They should be able to deal with that.
And then I would also add that even when it's somebody who's outside of Starfleet, for example, in the case of Book and
Michael,
they're a couple, but oftentimes Michael's decision making will be affected based on the fact that it's Book who's involved in the situation or scenario. So even if it's a non-Starfleet person, you're still going to make certain decisions that are going to be different than you normally would make.
Yeah.
So I don't see, the Starfleet aspect of it is not going to change whether you're going to drop what you're doing for your significant other in the moment when they need you.
Yeah, the judgment's kind of compromised regardless. Yeah. But I was thinking there are two differing sides of that. One is then you have other relationships like father-son, right? Sisko, his son is not in Starfleet, and that does possibly compromise his decision-making because he's going to put Jake above everything always, theoretically, or it's at least going to make these decisions harder. But on the other side of that is doctors are not allowed to operate on, family or loved ones because they don't want to be emotionally compromised. So I don't know. I kind of see both sides of that. But on Star Trek, I prefer to see them all, humping each other and stuff like that anyway. So I think, it's good. It's good storytelling, it creates all the drama and, it's good.
Yeah.
Receiving on both ends.
And with that, everybody, we're going to hit our next segment in just a moment. And this next segment will be covering everything that we had never noticed before, something new that we hadn't seen or hadn't noticed or figured out in the past, because especially after watching it a bunch of times, you go back and you start kind of looking for things that you hadn't picked up on previously. And there are always tons of things to pick up on which to pick up. So sorry, Mai. We'll be right back, everybody, on the seventh rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back. We're doing the free-for-all. Of course, you know this is from the episode Shag Trek Deep Space Nine, A Man Alone. Actually, that's what Eve called it. Eve, explain yourself.
just popped into my mind. Yes, it's your guys' fault.
Shag Trek. And Donna Runyon in our Zoom chat says Sisko knew Bashir didn't have a chance, so he wasn't worried about it. He's like, oh yeah. Yeah, you go for it. I'm your buddy.
That's all you, bro. All you.
You march right up there. And,
good luck with that.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about things we hadn't noticed previously. Melissa, Cirroc, and I hit a few things. What do you think, Eve? Were there any things you noticed that you hadn't noticed before?
Yeah. So the one thing that I did notice was when they were looking at the log entries in how do you say his name? Ibudan.
Ibudan, yeah.
They made a reference to the fact that he left the Alderaan spaceport, which obviously is from Star Wars. Although it must be another Alderaan. Because obviously that's already been destroyed, so there must be one in the Star Trek universe as well. But yeah, apparently they did that as a joke because Michael Okuda loved Star Wars at the time. So I thought that I just hadn't noticed that before, and I think the fact watching it again and watching it on a bigger TV really helped to see that. So that was quite fun.
Well, Eve, how do we know that it was destroyed in Star Wars already? What was the timeline of Star Wars?
Because obviously it was a long time ago, so
that's right.
It was a bit out. It was really cool. So that was really good fun. And then the other thing that I hadn't realized going back and looking at the companion is this was originally the episodes 2 and 3 were out of order in terms of the filming, so that's why you have a little bit of differences in how makeup and hair is done, but also when you actually watch this one, it's much more sort of an expository episode in terms of, you get all of the dynamics of setting up these different friendships and all the different characters, and you get a bit more background that we didn't get in the pilot. So that made sense, knowing that, watching it again out of sequence, because I thought there was lots of really good character development and interactions in this episode that I really enjoyed.
That's really cool. So everybody knows, Alderaan is long gone. It's very clear. Jason Oken, what do you think? Did you catch anything new this time on your 47th viewing?
Yeah, that's 47 is kind of generous. I think it's a lot more than that. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know if I should be admitting that. But kind of overall, especially if you go back, and I think I've said this before, if you go back and look at the early sort of DS9 episodes, the story has maybe, the first season wasn't as good, but I think certainly, the pilot and the first few that follow are much better than you'd remember they are. I mean, obviously, if you keep remembering, Move Along Home, that is not the highlight of anything. So I think looking at this, and as Eve said, this character development is, you're looking at real people having marital problems, having this, that, and the other thing. So I think that there's something you hear that's certainly worth looking at and paying attention to. I think, even going back to makeup, I actually like what they did to Renee's makeup early on, and I wasn't a big fan of that smooth look that came after. I think I really like this look a little bit better. Mm-hmm. So there's that component, and I like that. A couple of things that I noticed, or at least paid more attention to, is number one, I guess, is, and that shows up in a bunch of Trek, and I think DS9 certainly fixed it down the line, is that apparently Bajorans not only speak English, so they also write in English. That graffiti says "Shukran."
Right.
Wow, good catch.
Yeah. I think
universal translator.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the screens, but somebody actually put graffiti on. I think that got fixed. I think what I vividly remember, it showed up several times, but I think the first time I really noticed the difference was, and I think in Necessary Evil, when you open up a piece of paper and it obviously is not in English. So that was kind of a little bit of a jarring thing when you look at it. The other is more kind of global, and I think it appears a few times in DS9, and that's more of a kind of a global sort of world building situation. I mean, the Bajorans supposedly were under this Cardassian, occupation for at least 50 years, slave labor and all that. I mean, how do you get from, cutting edge genetic scientists and this, that, and the other thing? Where did they get their education? If they're all sort of slaving in the mines or fighting in the resistance. I mean, that always was in the back of my mind. It occurs throughout the series. I mean, you get anybody from Dr. Mora later down the line, and you get this sort of scientist who's dabbling in, quite sophisticated cloning technique. I mean, where did he learn that? I mean, what refugee camp that was? So, I mean, these are the things that I sort of noticed. It seemed a little bit out of place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Carrie, did you notice anything this time around that you hadn't noticed before?
Couple of very minor things. There was a scene early on with Sisko, Dex, and Bashir. I think it was in the infirmary or something, and Sisko was talking about something about going to dinner, and Bashir gets this very odd, sort of weird grin on his face, like he's thinking he's going to be having dinner with Dax. Maybe, I don't know. Just the look on his face was very amusing. And then at the end, when Keiko was getting the class started, the desks were so close to the wall. They did not need to be that close. I'm like, Keiko needs to have room to walk around. Why do the desks need to be that close?
Huh.
The room was certainly big enough. They could have had him back just a little bit more. I don't know. I just noticed this time just how close to the wall those desks were.
Cirroc, do you remember anything about that classroom? Any scenes in there ever?
No, I mean, very vaguely I remember the classroom. I don't remember the desks. Because when I saw the desk again, I thought it was cool how the computer screen was built into the front of it. I was like, well, that was pretty cool, but I don't remember seeing it at the time. Or I don't also know if the actual screen itself would turn on. I don't know if it had like a L car or not. But I do remember vaguely the school and the layout of the chairs.
Mm-hmm.
So, but no, I don't remember specifically. I mean, it was such a quick scene, and the school didn't really stick around for too long either. So,
well, how are you? Yeah. What about you? Did you notice something new or some things new this time that you hadn't noticed before?
I don't know. With this background up, you got to figure, right? This episode, I don't know if I'd call it a man alone or if I'd call it a woman not alone. Quark says before she got this new body with a really lascivious thing in his eyes, and that's just so happy making for people like me. But it was a huge departure from the misgendering that happens even today. They wrote this one with future sight of where we're going as a society, and I was so happily shocked when I watched it again this time. Sisko's playing of his role when he meets Jadzia in Quark's is interesting. He's dealing with what a lot of my friends dealt with when I transitioned, and his portrayal without the 2 decades under his belt as an actor in the modern world was actually very good. Not exactly on target, but very, very good. The basic ratio of reactions from people who face their friend having transitioned for the first time is usually a tiny portion of people have just outright rejection. A small but somewhat greater number have a tentative, let me get used to it reaction like Sisko had. But the vast majority today have a very welcoming and supportive approach.
Like the Klingon. Who was the Klingon? Yeah. Kor, was it, I think?
The Dahar Master, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but think that although DS9 is dealing with this issue of paramount importance today, and in fact, way ahead of it becoming okay to publicly talk about. They were still a function of their time and missed a chance for a perfect 10 score here. From my perspective, however, it's one of a few instances where mass media, big shows, take on a topic and do so with incredible grace. Jadzia saying that he should be comfortable with his discomfort and let time do the rest, that was the old school incorrect advice part. The correct thing is to seek to look at it from outside of yourself while asking yourself, what about the relationship with the previous iteration of that person made you enjoy that relationship? Was it the situations with them or the person? If the former, walk away. If the latter, stop being so focused on appearance. But talking about it at this level of importance to both characters in a major TV show and for an extended scene, amazing. DS9 makes this work, and in a time warp, to be honest. And it's a combination of great writing. It's an unbelievable ensemble cast. But I think the key ingredient for 2.5 decades is the fans. I think that really gets it for me. And then the last thing I want to say, which is totally unrelated to that, was I thought that the changing point, the shifting of gears, the hitting of the gas, the really making it zoom forward part of Nog and Jake's relationship was when they're walking on the promenade with the glop stick, and Nog has this look on his face of just thinking about it for a second. He stops and he goes, "Nog, my name is Nog." And that was when he really shifted gears and said, "Yeah, I'm ready to be your buddy." And I love that. Aaron, you killed it. That was fantastic. That's all I got.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mai. All right, Goldie Scott Jensen, what's up with you? What'd you find when you put up your magnifying glass up to the screen?
Hold the magnifying glass out. I like the slow bit. I talked about last time about Rolaren's brow that she has in TNG with the Bajoran makeup, how it's not just the ridges on her nose, but it also goes a little bit across her eyebrows.
Yeah.
I noticed how this was kind of a couple people I saw it on. Mm-hmm. It seemed like it was really just slowly kind of trickling out. Just like, I don't know if it's a nitpick thing, but also there was not a lot of male Bajorans with earrings on in this one. I noticed that a lot. There was only one that I saw, and I didn't know if that was like a choice moved to later on, where it was more of a religious, that word religious, because I know they talk about it with Ro, how, I wear this because of my house and everything like that. But I know if it gets moved on to later, where they just decide that yes, everyone wears them, and then even when they're evil, they have them on the other side. That they still have that. But I was also keeping in mind something that I had heard back on one of the virtual Trek cons when Doug Drexler was on, and he was talking about a lot of the design that they did and how threes pop up a lot in DS9 with the 3 pylons and the 3 circles within the Bajoran symbols.
Oh, really? And the 3 serpents,
like that.
if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and I've been trying to keep it in mind as I'm watching, and I noticed in that first scene how there was a group of people in Quarks, how you had Odo and Quark down there with their first really great scene, face-to-face with each other. And then you also had Sisko and Dax, and then you had Miles and Keiko up top, and I saw that was a bit of a 3 there. So I'm going to try to keep that in mind, and maybe I'll draw a little bit too much symbolism from it as we go through. And also, I want to have some more leave Keiko alone moments, because being grown, man, Keiko is just trying to live her life. And there's a bunch of these people that'll yak on the internet about this, and I'm watching this with more of a microscope this time, because I don't think Keiko's ever actually been wrong. And I'm going to pull this out this whole time. So, and lastly, my favorite laugh that I got that might have been unintentional was, I love how when you get a crowd with pitchforks that are coming to do the killing, and all it always takes is shooting a gun up in the air.
Yeah. I wondered about that too. Like, how did they really hear just a phaser shot over the din of like yelling and pushing, and how'd they even hear it, right?
He just fired it in the air, and I wonder what it hit too. I hope it was on stun, because I hope it just didn't keep going and blast a hole in the top of the stage. And Miles,
we're
is
losing
going
pressure,
up there to fix
Gavin.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of pressure, Faith, what's up with you? No pressure. Did you find anything recently that you hadn't noticed before?
Well, you know what? I've seen these quite a number of times as well. So
more than Jason, though?
When you said probably. Maybe. I don't know. We'd have to do a real tally. Not fighting words or anything. We can all, get along, but many times. But when you said deep dive, I dove deep. Okay, so I Googled the episode title, and as we know, Deep Space Nine is sort of supposed to be, a Western town out in space. There is an movie, A Man Alone, from 1955.
Ooh.
I sat down and I watched that movie.
Wow.
Okay, so short synopsis. Hopefully, 1955. That's enough years. If you haven't seen it, sorry, I'm gonna spoil a little bit.
Spoiler.
Spoiler alert. Here we go. So it's basically about an outlaw that stumbles through the desert into this town. Happens upon what do you call the carts with the mail carts that used to travel across? Drawing a blank.
Pony Express?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. And so he comes across one of those that's clearly been shot up and stolen from, and then takes, one of their horses that's been tied up and goes into this town. They are just discovering that this has happened. And so, of course, he's the prime suspect. He ends up hiding in this girl's cellar. It becomes a whole big thing, but they don't know he's there at first. And so, of course, there's a mob, and it's very much like our episode. And so watching this, kind of thinking of this guy as Odo. Obviously, he's sort of unknown. He's from outside of the town. He's suspected of doing, bad things or at least not being really welcomed. And then as the story progresses, you're finding out more about him and how he really has a heart of gold. And he's, all the things that is known about him really there's been reasons for it. Just like with our sweet dear Odo. And then by the end of the movie, he sort of, uncovered this corruption in the town, as Odo sort of does in this episode. And they end on a note of, well, you should take the girl and leave. No, I think I'll stay. It seems like now that we're getting this sorted, that it's going to be okay here. And it kind of made me think, why would Odo stay here? Why would he be part of this town where clearly he's not really welcomed by a lot of people at first? Mm-hmm. But because he's in that position, also put there by Gul Dukat, so we got to give respect where respect's due, to kind of manage and keep the peace. And he carries that on in his own way. He's making the station a better place for everybody. And I really liked that sort of parallel there. And I'm sure the writers saw the movie and, had their own way of pulling that in. So I really enjoyed, watching that, thinking of Odo, and we miss him.
Oh,
excellent.
Absolutely. Real quick, I really like that you brought up the Old West thing, because that was in my notes as well, that this is by far the first time that I really, really noticed this feeling like an Old West episode. It felt like it was just an Old West story that they just took and plopped into sci-fi, because we know that it was supposed to be kind of like one of these frontier shows, one of these kind of shows, with the Old West, with cowboys and sheriffs and all that. And I feel like this episode, more than any other one, felt like that to me. And I hadn't noticed that until today. But Malissa, Cirroc, any final thoughts before we close it out?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up that that's something that I hadn't noticed before is how Bashir's immaturity and his awkwardness, and I hadn't really appreciated it before watching it the first runs. But then he has this ability to switch from this awkward, immature fella who doesn't know how to deal with women to this very serious, he's a very smart doctor. And there's moments in this episode where you can tell he's really good at his job. And this is why he's in the position that he's in. And that struck me differently this time than other watches. So, and I agree, Keiko gets a bad rap, but she's got some valid points. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hang on. Faith, did you just say you identify with Bashir?
Not with his luck and love, but with his exuberance and trying to get in there and do the best he can and awkwardness all the way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Sorry, what were you saying, Cirroc?
I was going to say that one of my criticisms of this episode, besides the ADR, was the inside of Odo's office when his office was ransacked and Quark comes in. That scene was poorly lit, in my opinion. The lighting on Odo's face was way too bright, and it just doesn't match the consistency of the tone of the promenade that we've seen throughout the show. It was way too much of a bright white light. It wasn't soft, and they didn't put any softness on it. I didn't like the lighting in that scene. The other thing I was going to say was Morn got up and walked away when Odo sat down.
He ditched Odo. He fully ditched him.
No, literally. I was like, what an ass. Like, you barely say nothing this whole time.
Dude.
Maybe Odo was being a downer.
He didn't want to
it was. Yeah. I was like, come on, Morn, man. Disappointed in that. The other thing that I jumped out at me on this watch was, we've gone through COVID now. And one of the things that I learned from COVID was watching my daughter go to school on a computer. And a lot of parents out there watch their kids go to school on a computer. And those of us that know that that's not the right way for a kid to be learning, because it's bad enough for an adult to be able to keep their focus on a computer and go to work all day, but for a kid with a very short attention span, who also needs the interaction of other kids and a teacher and all of these things, to remove that away from them is the form of torture. And I think that Jake describes it. He says staring alone at the computer gets to be boring sometimes, right? And he basically expresses what millions of children went through during these lockdowns, which is staring, at the computer and it being boring. So I thought, wow, for somebody who, for the technology wasn't there yet, people weren't looking at iPads all day and they weren't looking at their phones. And so for them to foresee that kind of the day that would come when kids are staring at the computer and going to school, I thought that's a really amazing foresight for the writers. And then lastly, I would say, guess who the first one to class is? Jake! First one in school.
Kiss ass.
Amazing. Yeah.
Along those lines,
the teacher too.
Here's something real quick for all of you. I thought I put this in my notes, but was this Keiko and Rom's only conversation together in the entire Deep Space Nine series?
Might be.
I think so.
It might be.
Keep an eye on that, because I feel like they have to talk again at some point.
Can't hear you, Faith.
I can't think of any other times that they were together.
Yeah, that kind of hit me when I was watching them. I was like, oh, this is a weird dynamic. I don't think we've ever seen it, but maybe we have.
Oh. Little lady.
What do you think, Jason? Keiko and Rom?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, must have been the only one. It was an interesting kind of dynamic and interaction, and the way I guess Max's approach to Rom was quite a bit different at first. I'm not sure how much sort of information was given, to Max, and it's if you look at the character he played on TNG on Captain's Holiday, it almost looks kind of identical in behavior, and that changes at some level almost kind of very, very suddenly later on. I frankly like the later ROM than the earlier ROM, but it's one of the things that's a little bit jarring to see if you go back and you haven't seen it for a while. That sort of kind of a sinister type character, and of many characters on DS9, I think ROM undergoes maybe one of the greatest changes in development. I guess along with Nog from the beginning, I can't read to Starfleet in 3 years. So I think there's quite a bit of change there, and a welcome change, and that's one of the differences I think we see in the DS9 and then the other series, where characters actually on purpose stay the same for years and years, and here you have growth, you have change. On the one hand, obviously, Cirroc, you go from being basically like a young teenager to an adult, so you see that kind of a change go through the years. You also see characters go through changes. I mean, Bashir. We talked about Bashir, who he starts with. The way he starts, it's nowhere near where he finishes. I mean, the guy has an arc. Yeah, and this is wonderful to see, and sort of jumping back to the early sort of part of DS9, just to see the genesis of it, and knowing where it goes. I think it makes the story richer. It actually makes the experience of watching something that was done early a lot more rewarding than maybe watching it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, I think that's about all we've got for you today, but go watch the episode again and find new things. And then in the comments below, tell us what we've missed or some new items that you'd never seen before, because there's tons of them. There's still more in my notes, and I'm sure everybody's got more notes that they're like, whatever, I'll get it next time. But you're always going to find something new in a Star Trek episode, or 10 new things. But that's about it for us. So thank you to Eve, Faith, Carrie, Jason, Goldu, Scott. For myself, Malissa Longo, Cirroc, Lofton, Dennis Madalone, and the best smile in Star Trek. Oh, actually, let me pull that up right here. The best laugh, Aron Eisenberg. Thank you all very much. And we will see you next time. Until then, always remember the 7th rule.